I briefly covered Problem Child in a video I made after coming back from hiatus in early October, but I feel that video was a bit rushed and didn't cover the topics in as much detail as I wanted. I also want to see if longer, more detailed reviews of webcomics will work on my channel, so here goes. I also plan to do the same with Winter Moon later. Problem Child is a webcomic drawn and written by Brian Ellis. In a nutshell, it's a slice-of-life comedy drama, recently with more emphasis on the drama, featuring a realistically written, grounded cast of characters in a completely plausible scenario. The main characters are a teenage girl called Amber and her alcoholic dysfunctional mother Sandra. Amber, whose parents have been divorced, is suffering due to her mom's verbal abuse and negligence and is not understood even by her friends. By befriending an eccentric artist girl, Daisy, Amber's life begins to improve and she gains more confidence, while Sandra's life is falling apart around her as we learn more and more about her past and inner thoughts and feelings. As often is the case with web media, the comic doesn't have its current shape in the beginning yet. The art style definitely becomes more refined as time goes on, but I already like it from the beginning. As I said in an earlier video, this style seems to be influenced by Brian O'Malley's Scott Pilgrim, only Problem Child is in full glorious color. There's really nice coloring in the characters and the environments and clear painstaking effort to create realistic settings and hide little details in the strips. For example, it was only on a repeat read that I realized Amber and her father were eating burgers from a generic fast food place in this strip, signifying how little time Scott has for his daughter. Or, on a more humorous note, Sandra's whiskey business license plate. Or how about the fact that a nameless young dude Sandra was sleeping with in an earlier episode actually appears as a friend of Sandra's on-again, off-again 18-year-old boyfriend in this strip. I could name even more examples, some funny and some quite depressing, like why Sandra chooses to give the guy she's dating a totally new name. But honestly, I don't want to spoil too much of this comic, and part of the fun is figuring them out yourself. This writing has layers, man. What's even more seemingly off in the first few parts is the tone and the story. In the beginning, I was ready to categorize Problem Child as a black comedy, while with a constant snarky back and forth between Sandra and Amber. But the tone of the series quickly gets more and more dark. Instead of punchlines, we have a sad Amber and we move away from 4 panels and a punchline formula to one with a long-running storyline and 3-dimensional characterization. Even the layout of the comic changes about 20 or so episodes in to a completely vertical one. This layout fits the comic well, as you don't accidentally see the last panel too early. This difference in tone is probably why Ellis decided to rewrite the first 25 episodes by making a new series titled Problem Child: New Beginnings. Although intended to replace the beginning of the series and accepted as the new canon, the tone and improved quality are straight from the later installments of the series. Most interestingly, it shows situations from earlier episodes from a very different perspective. For example, Amber and Daisy's friendship begins when Amber's former best friend, Freya, seemingly ignores her and berates her publicly for complaining too much about her problems. Obviously, this turns the audience against Freya and gives more sympathy to Amber. It's a very black and white situation. That's not a racial joke, by the way. But black and white situations are boring, and Freya is not a generic alpha bitch character. In New Beginnings, we see that Amber really did essentially ignore Freya and her needs, completely in favor of ranting about her mother day and night. At the same time, given her mother's behavior, it's totally warranted that she did. So who's right here? Well, ultimately it doesn't matter, just like in real life. And that's what I love about Brian Ellis' writing. These characters feel real, and giving some actually negative qualities to our sweet cinnamon bun of a protagonist works in favor of that. But if Amber isn't all sweet and innocent, then surely Sandra isn't all that bad. I mean, sure, she's abusive, neglectful, irresponsible, mean, bitter, and... Well, she's a dang MILF though, you gotta admit that.
You fucking degenerate!
Anyway, here comes another good example of nuanced storytelling. We see time and again how Sandra had a hard life, abandoned by her parents and left to be raised by a strict religious aunt, forced to bear a child conceived accidentally and whom she never wanted, the stress of which ultimately led to a failed marriage. And recently we've been learning how Sandra has been involved in a...
Hey kids, it's me, anti-spoiler Andy, cutting off this video for a few seconds to tell you that spoilers are not cool. If you spoil something for someone, then I'm gonna fucking come into your house and...
Damn! All of this doesn't feel haphazard, as Sandra's backstory has been discussed and hinted at since early episodes, but we don't see the payoff until much later, making the plot flow very organically. And the best part of it is, just because Sandra had a bad life, at no point does the story make excuses for her bad behavior. We know why she acts the way she does and we feel sorry for her, but it doesn't excuse or erase every mistake she did since, including being irresponsible enough to almost accidentally cause her daughter's death. Problem Child goes to some pretty dark places, and Sandra is hardly the only adult in the story with problems. Amber's father, Scott, feels like the superior parent at first. Amber clearly prefers to spend time with him, and he seems to be doing everything he can to help his daughter. But Scott is very misguided, thinking that money to provide for his daughter outweighs his daughter's need for a decent parent who has time for her. And when push comes to shove, Scott's foolish pride still causes him to act selfishly instead of doing the right thing to his daughter. Like Sandra, Scott never takes the time to really talk to Amber and ask about her wishes. Of course, no comic is perfect, but the flaws I could name are so minor that they don't really affect my enjoyment of the series. As I mentioned, the early tonal inconsistencies are covered by the New Beginnings rewrite anyways. The art is really good and can rise to surprising greatness sometimes, but some poses, especially some from the side, can be a bit off at times. A slightly bigger issue some could have in this comic is that it might get a bit dialogue heavy sometimes. There are some beautiful strips where the story is conveyed through actions or the expressions of the characters, but then there are some where characters speak in rants that cover half of a panel. Also, as the comic introduces more and more side characters, it causes the amount of storylines to pile up too. To add to the already great things this comic has going for it, the up-to-date schedule is consistent and good. But on the flip side, it feels like it takes a long time for the story to get anywhere when we have to follow Amber in one storyline, Sandra in another, Scott in a third, Dylan in a fourth. You get the picture. Then again, these individual storylines usually always converge into some big event or particularly impressive comic, so I'm not complaining. Build-up is important too, even if it causes things to drag at times. Just when you think that even the seemingly mundane slice-of-life drama of these characters can't get any better, the story has recently kicked into high gear. I don't know what's gonna happen next, but this comic keeps me coming back for every installment. Laughing at good punchlines and enjoying the good art are already good enough, but it's the writing department where Ellis truly shines. All in all, this webcomic is still a strong recommendation, and it can be found on Webtoon, Tapas and its own website for starters. It's still running and will have probably updated a few times by the time this video is done. It really has become my favorite webcomic recently. And I hope you all enjoyed this video. As said, the next webcomic to get a full, less comedic and more analytical treatment will be Winter Moon. And then, well, who knows, there's the Eternity Project Homestuck, and as many people have asked, I should read more Better Days to see if I will really hate it as much as I do already. Either way, thanks for all the support everyone, and see you again soon.